Okay. Unit 7, Skill 8, completing the square. So the essential question is, how do we write the equation of a circle in standard form, even with a leading coefficient? All right, so it's writing the equation of a circle is what we're doing. It's a complete review. You've seen this before. I'm going to throw in one quirk towards the end of it. Should be fairly straightforward. So the idea, and you've seen this before, is to get it in center radius form, starting with the general form. Okay, so we first have to group our x's together, okay, and move the constant to the right hand side. We also want to group the y's together. So at first we rewrite it with a minus 4x here, or negative 4x. I typically just write minus 4x, but that's not a big deal. All right, and then the y had a minus 6y, so we put that there. And we move the 8 over, so it's negative 8. After that, we're going to take and do half of b squared. So, oops, move that over a little bit. So, half of the b value squared. So half of 4 squared and half of 6 squared. That's what we're going to add to both sides. All right, we've got to fill in the box with the exact same thing. So half of 4 squared, half of 4 is 2, squared is still 4. All right, so we're going to add 4 to both sides, and then half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9, so we're going to add 9 to both sides. From there, it becomes as simple as, can you play the add multiply game? So for add multiply for the first part, add multiply, we're going to have x minus 2 and x minus 2. That will add a negative 4 and multiply to positive 4. And then the y's will be y minus 3 and y minus 3. That way it adds to negative 6 right here and multiplies to positive 9. Then we add the right-hand side, simplify it. That's going to work out to become 5. Helps to have the pen instead of the pointer. Well, x minus 2 multiplied by itself. Anything multiplied by itself. If you see x times x, right, or 4 times 4, or, I don't know, y times y, you're going to write it as something squared, right? That's equal to y squared. So, down here, we're going to have an x minus 2 squared, and right here, a y minus 3 squared. And that's going to equal 5. From there, we just need to find the center and the radius. Well, the center is always inside. Take a look at the formula. It's your HK is your center. So the opposite sign, 2, comma 3. Remember, it is always the opposite sign, so 2, comma 3 is our center. And the radius, this is the part that's a little bit screwy, messes with people a little bit. You take a look at this, it equals r squared. So that means in this equation right here, this guy right here is r squared. So you really don't have to do this ever again, but you're going to write r squared equals 5. And from there, we need to get r, the radius, so we have to square root. So we'd square root both sides and say r equals the square root of 5. And then we're done. Okay, let's jump into example 2. Do one together. So example 2. Let's see if I can twist that a little bit. Oh, that was bad. So first things first, group the x's together, group the y's together, and we should be good to go. So we have our x squared plus 2x plus a blank plus my y squared plus 8y plus a blank equals, move the negative 1 over, plus blankety blankety blank. Okay, right, there we go. So, alright, once you have it all grouped together, you can figure out what's going inside the blank, or the box if you want to make a box. The first one is going to be half of 2 squared. Well, half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is still 1. So again, it's that number divided by 2 squared. So we get 1. The next one is, so I'm going to take that 1 and add it to both sides. Now I need to do the same thing with the 8. So half of that, 8 over 2, quantity squared, that's 4 squared. So I'm going to be adding 16 to both sides. And there we go. Alright, so now we're going to do add multiply for both of those. This is going to give me x plus 1, x plus 1. 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2. For the y's, alright, I'm going to have y and y. What multiplies to 16 that could possibly add to 8? That would be 4 and 4. Both of them positive will add to a positive 8. That's going to equal 16. So I have x plus 1 quantity squared plus my y plus 4 quantity squared equals 16. what's going on here. Squared equals 16. So my center, again, signs are obviously opposite. So it's going to be negative 1 comma 4. Negative 1 comma 4, and the radius. So again, if r squared equals 16, this one's pretty easy. The radius is 4. Move on to the next page. All right. So again, we're going to group our x's and our y's together. So we have x squared, and there isn't any other x's, which actually makes this problem easier. Throws some of you off, but really it's going to make it easier. So there aren't any other x's, so they're all already grouped together. There's nothing else to do. So I'm just going to keep going and write the y's. Move over the negative 9. So I'm only going to have plus 1 blank here because there wasn't anything to deal with the x's. I mean, there's no x that I can half and then square, so there's nothing to add over on the right-hand side because there's nothing to add on the left. So I only have to work and worry about the y's. So half of 10, so again, 10 over 2 squared, that's going to be 5 squared. We're going to add 25 to both sides. Okay, so we have x squared. Now, technically, I guess you could write x plus 0 squared, but nobody really wants to write that. It's extra work, and we're all about not doing extra work, I'm sure. The add multiply is going to be 5 and 5. That multiplies to 25, and adds to negative 10 if they're both negative. So equals 16 when you add those two, which is kind of nice. So now we have x squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 16. Again, the radius is very simple. It's the square root of it. The center this time, there is no x adding or subtracting left or right. And you guys know inside parentheses is your left-right movement, obviously. So that means that the x coordinate is just going to be 0. And then the minus 5, obviously it's the opposite sign. So there we have it. 0, 5 is the center. The radius is 4. Now, for those of you who haven't noticed yet, maybe you haven't been paying attention or I've been going too fast, this 10 and this 5 are always have that kind of relationship. So when you take a look at this problem, whenever we do half b squared, right, we get 25. It has not been a coincidence that this number right here and here was exactly half of that. It always will be half of it, and the sign will actually be the same as whatever the sign is right here. So if you ever get stuck with add multiply, you can really just half that number, and it will always work out only with this type of problem. Okay, this is the only type of problem where you can actually just half the number and it works. Otherwise, add multiply can be anything. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. What do we have? All right, well, this one's a little bit more challenging. All right, we start off with some nastiness here. What we want to do here is first just notice that everything has everything with the x squared and the y squared has been multiplied by 2. So right off the bat, I'm going to take that whole thing and I'm going to divide everything by 2. So divide it by 2. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other, and we're allowed to do that. Totally can. All right, so move that down. When we divide it, we end up with x squared plus y squared minus 2x, make that an x, come on, plus 4y minus 29 equals 0. Now we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. So we're going to group all the x's together. So we have an x squared plus, minus 2x. Fix that. So minus 2x plus a blank plus y squared plus 4y plus a blank equals 29 plus blank plus blank. So when we half 2, halving the 2 here is 1. 1 squared is still 1. So it's going to be plus 1. The next part we have to half 4, which is 2. 2 squared is 4, so we're going to add 4 to both sides. From there, we have to add multiply. So I have x minus 1 and x minus 1. 1 times 1 is 1, and it adds to negative 2, and they're both that. Also, you could just half the negative 2 and get negative 1. That works. So halving 4 would give us 2 and 2. Plus 2 and plus 2 would multiply to 4 and add to positive 4. So if that add multiply, it's y plus 2, y plus 2. and then it's supposed to equal, looks like 35. I'm sorry, 34, I'll be all right. So it equals 34. So from there, we write it out. X minus 1 squared plus the y plus 2 squared equals 34. That sounds a little bit better. All right, so the center, straightforward. All right, that is going to be 1, negative 2. And the radius is going to be square root 34. All right, so example 5, I'm going to have you start. I'll start you off and then have you finish it all by yourself, and then we'll check and compare answers. So the first thing you're going to want to do in this problem is divide everything by a constant that will make it just x squared and just y squared. So we're going to divide everything by 3. What I do to one side of the equation, I do to the other, just like in the last problem. The 0 divided by 3 that we have over here just stays 0. So go ahead and do that. Divide everything by 3, then solve for the center radius form, and we'll check answers. So go ahead and pause the video right now. Okay, so a problem like this. All right, there we have the x plus 1. Look at that. Didn't really copy over plus 1. Y minus 2. We're going to have a center at negative 1, 2, because the signs are always opposite, that general formula. And the radius is going to be square root 4, which is 2. All right, moving on to the last question, which is the same idea. We're first going to go through and divide everything by 3. Okay. So we get x squared plus y squared minus 12x minus 10y minus 60 is going to equal 0. Regrouping it, x squared minus 12x plus blank plus our y squared minus 10y plus blank equals 60 plus blank and blank. Halving b squared. Halving 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So we add that to both sides. Halving 10, the next part, the 10y, halving 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. Whoops, let me use a different color. So it's going to be 25. So now we're going to do the add multiply game. So it's going to be minus 6 and minus 6 works. And y minus 5 and y minus 5. And when you add all that up, you should get 121. So, problem here, x minus 6 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 121. Well, that's not an answer that they have there, and that's unfortunate. So what are we going to do? Well, we take a look at it and we realize, hey, all of them have a 3 times. And what did we originally do in this problem? Well, technically we divided by 3 first. So, since we divided by 3 first, we actually kind of got rid of that. We need to add that back in now that we've done all the fancy math and the hard part of it. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. Well, when I multiply by 3, I get 3 parentheses x minus 6 squared plus 3 parentheses y minus 5 squared. And it equals 3 times 121, which conveniently is 363. So you can see why the 121 is an answer up here, because you're going to get that 121, and that's, you know, people are going to look at that and go, oh, that must be the answer because I did that, I must have screwed up over here. No, that's not the case. So we had to multiply both sides by 3, so we're looking for that and equaling 363, and that's why the majority of them have 363. Anyways, the answer choice that we're going to get is choice 4. We're good to go and we're done. All right, I want to jump back up real quick to the problem above. Again, this question right here, all right, if I wanted the true center radius form of the circle, I'd have to have that multiplied by 3 back in, so I would have 3 times x plus 1 squared plus 3 times y minus 2 squared equals 12. Okay? And that would give me my equation. But if I wanted the center radius form so I could find the radius, I'd have to divide the 3's off, and then I'd be good to go. So that would look like dividing this guy by 3, getting just x plus 1, this guy by 3, getting just the y minus 2, and dividing 12 by 3 to get the 4. You get the idea. So don't forget, write your summary, get your practice problems done. Thank you very much.